Across industries globally and in India, insurance is no exception. The focus is shifting from a product-driven approach towards customer-driven strategies. Hyper-personalization of offerings backed by data-driven insights is shaping the insurance sector. We bring you a unique blend of global and local perspectives now with Microsoft leader Sasha Sanyal, the global insurance leader Microsoft, and Vijayant Rai, the country leader banking, financial services and insurance at Microsoft India.
Hi, everyone. In the past 2 years, we've all experienced dramatic disruption around the world. Companies in every industry have turned to digital technologies for resilience and agility, necessary to survive in this environment. The urgency for BFSI companies to transform at scale has never been more. And in today's world, if you look at financial services organizations, they operate in a multi-channel, always-on environment, and insurance is no exception. From web aggregators to self-service apps to digital payments to video KYC, banks, FSIs, insurance companies are all striving to keep up with the necessary pace of change. The consumer himself is changing so rapidly, in terms of his demands and what he's expecting in terms of simplification and streamlining. So it's a massive, disruption and opportunity out there in the market. When we look specific to insurance in the country in India, it's an underpenetrated market. It's less than probably 4% penetrated in India compared to the global averages. But the good thing is we have a number of favorable factors from a very young population, a population which is heavily, there's a lot of saving in this market. At the same time, a lot of awareness which has come up. Global figures tell us that India is already the 10th largest insurance market in the world, 15th largest non-life insurance market in the world. So great place to be right now. And at the same time, if you look at what they're predicting in terms of growth rates, we are looking at high double digits in terms of growth rate for the insurance market. So huge opportunity out there. And as we look at this, we look at what we're doing today here with Future Ready. The Future Ready is where we bring in global experts to come and tell us about the future and how to simplify it. And with that, I'd like to introduce Sasha. Sasha Sanyal is our global leader for insurance. My name is Vijayant. I head the banking and finance business for Microsoft in the country. Me and Sasha will be talking about what we see in the insurance market. Sasha will help us sort of give us the headlines on those trends and give us some examples of how we could work with insurance organizations globally. Welcome again, Sasha.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Wonderful, Sasha. And just from your vantage point, when you look at the industry and what we've all gone through and what we're seeing now, what do you think are the top trends which are emerging and what's top of mind for CEOs?
So let me step back. I think right now, the biggest thing is we are obviously in the middle of a humanitarian crisis. And I do think all the CEOs across every single industry are deeply, deeply focused on figuring out how to make sure any disruptions, whether it be supply chain, whether it be the human chain, things of that nature. So I would suspect that is one of the things that is most top of mind. But getting to the insurance industry, the last couple of years have been interesting, right? It's been interesting for everybody. People had to move to home very, very quickly. People had to virtualize very, very quickly. The ones that succeeded in virtualization and coming back online quickly were the ones who leveraged cloud, for example. We have clients who didn't have cloud and had to move large pieces of equipment, had to get people to various places to make sure they could get their employees back online. So virtualization has become the biggest conversation, which obviously positions us brilliantly. There's a few other things that people are thinking about. One, digitization. What parts of the value chain should be digitized? And again, how? And what does that do for your customer experience, your employee experience, your collaboration across channels, things of that nature? So these are all some of the big things that people are talking about in the insurance industry. The final and probably the largest thing, which has always been critical for the insurance industry, is usage of data. But the shift that we are seeing, and by the way, insurance is one of the oldest industries built on usage of data. The entire premise of the insurance industry is built on data. But the big shift that's happening is moving from looking at data that is historical to looking at data that is future looking. So moving from did we do this the right way? Did we actually do the right degree of actuarial? Did we underwrite the right set of policies? Is what is going to happen? How do you look around the corner? Is this person actually going to be profitable based on additional sources that exist outside? And that's a big thing that they're trying to deal with. That's a big thing that they're working through. And again, I think technology is the underpinning of all of this. So it's a great position for Microsoft as well.
Thanks, Shasha. Great insights, and absolutely resonates with what we're seeing in the market. Fortunately, with Microsoft and what we're doing with customers in India as well, we've been working very closely to get people back to work in a hybrid fashion, ensure that they can sort of engage with their customers in a remote fashion. From the days of the lockdown when you had complete no physical contact there. We've worked with customers, using Microsoft technologies to enable things like training their agents in the insurance world down to, creating chatbot frameworks for them to interact with their customers and partners. So absolutely resonates. Thanks for that, Shasha. I think it's a great segue as well to my next question, which is around the customer himself and the kind of changes and expectation he has. Is because he's been exposed to so many more different means of engagement with fintechs and different apps out there. Probably your thoughts in terms of what the customer is expecting from the insurance industry, and how should we take that ahead?
So, look, the biggest thing is a frictionless customer experience. I would say that is probably the number one thing. So, and you talked about the India market, right? The India market is younger people. It's younger people who are buying insurance for the first time, but their buying behaviors are different. They are not the kinds like our parents who would go sit with an agent, or in India's case, an agent would come to your house and sit with you and tell you what the options are and what makes the most amount of sense. These are folks that don't want to talk to anybody. They want to go in, they want to look at information, they want to compare across different insurance organizations, and they want a frictionless buying experience. They don't want to send lots and lots of documents. So how do we make sure that the customer experience through the entire customer journey, whether it's buying, whether it's policyholder servicing, whether it's claims, is completely frictionless? That's, I would say, the first thing that customers are looking for, especially the younger customers. The second thing is this concept of omni-channel. So when they want to speak to you, they want to be able to speak to you immediately from engaging on a phone. So shifting from one channel to the other with your information going across these channels is something that's becoming really, really critical. And let's talk about claims, for example. By the way, ICICI in India has one of the coolest claims experiences. And it's something that I think a big part of the world can learn from. It is fully automated, including image ingestion. So you have a wreck, something happens, you use your phone, you take pictures, you create this experience that is completely seamless for the person that is engaging with the application. But you have the ability to pick up the phone and call if you need help with any part of that process. So imagine the experience that the person has on the other hand, which is a completely end-to-end experience from beginning to end in a situation where they desire. But if there's another person who wants to say, hey, you know what? I really don't like this experience. I've had a really bad situation. I need to talk to a human being. That is also available. So that's the concept of omni-channel. The third big thing, by the way, that's happening is what I would call hyper-personalization. And this is much more in the buying behavior as opposed to the claim side. So customers don't want to engage and buy the generic policies that are created for everybody. They have very specific contexts, they have very specific needs, and they want to be serviced for those specific contexts and needs. So they don't want what the other person has bought. It is not something that says, I want 25 years of life insurance, blah, 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 blah. I want this specific thing for this specific need. So that's another thing that the insurance industry is dealing with, because what that requires for them to do is have hyper segments of data, unique data sources, the ability to underwrite without having these very generic products. And all of that is requiring them to put together a technology infrastructure, obviously, that allows them to do that effectively.
Thanks, Shasha. Those are great insights on what customers are expecting and looking at. I think I'd also want to pick your thoughts in terms of the rise of the fintechs and the disaggregation we're seeing in the market, and how does that impact, legacy insurers, and what should they be doing when you look at this change in the market?
Mhm. So the way I look at the market, the way I think about the market is, by the way, in two big buckets. Obviously, you have the traditionals, and then you have the insurtechs. Now, even the insurtechs are two separate buckets. There are the insurtechs that provide technology or services or capabilities to the provider insurtechs and the traditionals. And then there are those insurtechs that actually write policies. Going back to our last question, the insurtechs that are providers, the biggest thing that they're doing is trying to find ways in which to use unique data sets to solve very hyper personal problems. Now, the advantage that they have is that they have no history. They are not encumbered by years of information and years of data as they think about the future, right? So they can go in, they can innovate, they have very digital experiences, they have very frictionless claims processes, things of that nature. So that works really well for them. But the disadvantage that they sometimes have is that they don't have that data. So they have no ability to predict whether in 2 years they're going to be profitable, for example. The traditionals have almost exactly the opposite problem, right? Which is they are heavily encumbered by the fact that they have deep swaths of data and they have a tendency to use that to make any decision making. And because of all the risk profiling and things that exist, they struggle to move quickly. So one of the things that I think that the industry really needs to do to continue to evolve is work together to make sure that both are learning from each other. The second thing that is happening is this whole insurtech providers. The idea of taking an entire value chain and disrupting is no longer what happens. You have a disaggregated value chain, as you discussed. There are people, there are technology companies who are solving for micro portions of the value chain. So specifically, let's look at how we will do one portion of underwriting, which might be data aggregation. Or specifically, how do we look at how we do just the claims ingestion process, first notice of loss, things of that nature. And what insurance companies are doing with the help of companies like Microsoft, who build the entire tech infrastructure, is put these little modules together that solve very specific problems, create a glass pane above it that actually then allows all of these to be completely transparent to the agent, to the customer, to anybody that's using the technologies. Very few people are now trying to solve the big problem of let's look at the entire policyholder system, right? It's not as valuable anymore. But let's solve and let's specialize on one portion of the value chain, and let's invest in being absolutely the best in class on that, so that companies can then use you, integrate you into your tech stack, and then find a way to make the entire value chain more frictionless.
I think this is awesome guidance, Shasha. I mean, you talked about, the new age fintechs probably not having the legacy data, and then you have the ones with a lot of legacy data and the struggles with, what you make of it and how do you actually utilize it and how do you marry the incoming new data which comes in. So data is such a huge topic, and I think you and me can talk for a couple of hours on that, and we should do it sometime. It is probably pivotal to both fintechs and to legacy organizations in how they transform. What do they do with that data? And of course, Microsoft's there to sort of work with organizations to simplify that one. Just moving from there, Shasha, the other one, and it's quite top of mind for most CXOs I talk to in the country, is on the risk and fraud side of things. I mean, as more digital channels come into being and folks are doing more on digital, that's a big concern. So I just wanted to pick your thoughts on the risk and fraud side of things as digital channels are sort of, becoming more mainstream. There's a lot more, activity and action there. What should insurance companies look at when they look at, digital and risk and fraud in that paradigm?
So again, it goes back to data. All paths lead back to data, Vijayant. That's just what the world is right now. So let me give you a few examples of how risk is changing. Insurance is all about risk management, right? That's the base of it. So they're very, very good at doing that. The struggle that I think that they're starting to see is how do they look at more disaggregated data sets, different data sets, but also move more towards future data sets. So I think that's one thing. But the fact is that as they're looking at underwriting, they're not just looking at traditional historical data. They're starting to bring in these unique data sets, put the two together, and find a way to underwrite the risk and eliminate fraud that way. So let me give you some examples. When you are writing maybe a commercial policy, right? You have a set of restaurants that you're writing a commercial policy for, and it's great. You have all the information from them. They filled out all this information, and it says that we're here, we're here, we're here, we're here. We don't serve alcohol, which obviously has an impact on the pricing and so on and so forth. Great. So you think it's a pretty standard policy. Suddenly, you bring in a piece of information from somewhere else that tells you that the building that this is in has some kind of a chemical, not a factory, but something of that nature. Immediately, the profile of the risk changes, right? Because the building that the restaurant is in, despite the restaurant being a good risk profile, is in a building that has less of a good risk profile. You put these two data sets together, and suddenly your ability to underwrite becomes completely different. So putting data sets together to ensure that you eliminate risk or understand risk and eliminate fraud. Let's talk about fraud, right? Let's go back to the computer vision claims example that we were talking about. When you file a claim, you put in A, B, C, D, E pieces of information. When you submit a picture, you get GPS information, you get date and time information. Guess what that allows you to do? It allows you to get a whole other layer of information around fraud, right? So all of a sudden, instead of just 3 pieces of information the person has input during the claims, you're getting all these other layers of data that allow you to say, hey, you know what? This person actually wasn't here. They were somewhere else. Why is that? That's a trigger for fraud. So all of these additional bits of data that are allowing us to do different kinds of analytics, different kinds of underwriting, different kinds of risk profiling are a wonderful way to think about risk and fraud. So I think that's one aspect. The other thing is obviously there's lots. Again, we go back to the insurtechs. There are a lot of companies who are focused on finding ways to trigger fraud. And it is one of the biggest areas that there is a lot of time being spent on. So I would suspect that all of these things put together should give us a sense of comfort that we're moving in the right direction when it comes to both of these. Because yes, as you move more to virtual, as you underwrite policies without all the information, as you write a life insurance policy without doing a health check, there are different trigger points that you will have to look for to make sure you are not adding or introducing additional risk into your portfolio.
Absolutely. Thanks, Sasha, for that. And, it's interesting because what we do, Sasha, as you're aware, we have a really nice bunch of partners who help us in that space and global partners who specialize in areas around risk and fraud management and very neatly come into, our sort of solution when we look at providing that to different insurance companies. But thanks for that. That's wonderful guidance on the risk and fraud management side of things. Just one last question, Sasha, wanted to get your thoughts around is around, when you look at the challenges of the industry, what should be the 3-4 things CEO should think about, moving ahead and managing those challenges in the future?
So, and again, this might sound super simplistic, but I think one of the trends that we're seeing across the globe is this whole idea of cooperation, right? We have to look beyond the boundaries of our organization to find ideas. We do not know everything. And I say this, to insurance companies and to everybody. There are situations now where the best ideas are being created right outside of the boundaries of your walls, right? So how do you find a way to create this larger ecosystem play where you can bring in the right partners to solve your problems? Insurance is doing really well at that. So you see many insurance companies doing things where they're investing in insurtechs and allowing them to use their sandbox to experiment so that they learn, both parties learn, right? They're also bringing people into their value chains, as we discussed earlier, to make sure they create a frictionless experience for customers. So how do you bring in a broader set of people as you are trying to solve your problems, as opposed to only looking within your organization? Because the knowledge often resides just outside the walls of your organization. And as you look at it more broadly, you will find that you're solving problems much more holistically and much more effectively. So I think that is probably, in my mind, the biggest thing that I'm seeing more of. I would love for the customers in the room to sit back and say, hey, how can we actually talk to Microsoft and understand what they're seeing across these 15 insurance companies? How did they build this? Where did they learn that? What are they seeing here? So bring us into the table, bring us to the table, bring us into the room. We will bring ISVs to the room, we will bring InsurTechs to the room, and we will help you solve your problems so much better.
Super. Thanks so much, Sasha. Absolutely, completely resonate with those thoughts. I think Microsoft has this unique opportunity, along with our insurance partners, to create and forge that partnership where we can move together and move forward together in a big way. Massive opportunity in the country, in India. We're just starting off here. Extremely underpenetrated market, huge amount of growth which is going to happen, and this opportunity for us, partner with organizations, insurance organizations, to take things ahead. But thanks so much, Sasha, for the thoughts. I think it completely resonates right across, and I'm sure the audience, loved listening into what you had to talk today. I love talking to you today. Thank you.
Sounds perfect. Thank you for having me. I appreciate the opportunity and enjoy the rest of the day.
Thank you very much.